Welcome to the Echo Essentials podcast.
I'm Scott Clark.
And I'm Dave Dale.
Dave, what is the latest drama at the North Bay Conservation Authority?
The latest. Last week, I think the staff walked out on a lunch break to show support for their the human rights
Human resources
guy that blew the whistle on how chaotic it is.
So when they walked out, did they walk out and not go back, or they just walk out on their coffee break? Because wouldn't that just be a coffee break?
They just the unionized group like that now. They're freshly unionized because of it's so nice to work there. They just went on in the coffee break and went back. Now, you've
never worked there, so you don't know. It might be nice to work there.
Yeah, it might be, eh? It doesn't sound very good.
Well,
I'm just going
You're only getting one opinion.
No, actually, I'm not getting just one opinion.
Well, one opinion from that side. Because I'm sure the CO is saying it's fine.
No, I've heard what she's been saying.
What's she been saying? She says,
we're not going to say anything.
So you don't have both sides.
That's a side. That's a side.
That they're not going to say anything? Well, it's like anything they say, they're,
No, that's
they're
not
pooched.
true. No, that's not true.
So what could she say?
So we have some challenges. We're trying to work through them. There's a lot of nuances to this. I can't speak to specifics because it's personnel, but we are trying, and we are going to follow all the labor laws and to try to
rectify the situation?
Yeah, just show some compassion for the situation.
That actually sounds... When did you get compassion?
Well, no, I'm a public relations professional. I know how to write these things. I can't understand why people resort to the no comment just because they're legal people are telling them. There's very much that you could say that sound better than, oh, well, I'm sorry, I'm no comment.
Well, that's really interesting because you say that. I find now with the media being decimated and there's hardly any resources, that it's actually, I think, more of a strategic play now that you don't have to say anything anymore.
You think so, eh?
Yeah. I don't think in major markets when there's lots of media and follow-up in that, but you'll take like let's say the Nugget. It's
let's take Bay Today that was breaking the story.
Okay. Fair. Sorry. I was trying to spread the love around a little bit, but you're right. Bay Today broke the story. But there's Jeff is on the story, and then Stu, and then they have some tertiary guys, right? Like, I don't know, is Chris full-time there?
Yeah, Chris is full-time.
Okay, so they have 3 people, and they have to crank out a lot of stories. They don't have a lot of time to follow up on things and chase stuff, truly.
They did about 3 or 4 stories about this.
Yeah, but it's few and far between. So what I'm saying is it's a strategy now not to say anything, and I'm trying not to say certain people within our community, large organizations, refuse to talk to the media. Just straight out.
And I think that's a mistake. At this juncture, at the past juncture, at the future juncture of media, it doesn't matter the state of media. Take the opportunity to get your words out there.
But why is it a mistake? I don't disagree with you on this. Yeah. But I see the no comment working for certain organizations.
Is it really working though? How do you gauge that?
I don't see where they get their negative press then. Because if they don't communicate with the media, truly the media is not even actually making any or producing any stories about them, about some of these larger groups.
Well, the example we're talking about is a good example of quite a bit of media attention on this subject, that they didn't take advantage of being able to put any of their own public relations spin on it because they've chosen not to speak.
So let's, only because I sit on the advisory board of Bay Today, so I know, I'm not sure if it's common knowledge within media that Canada College won't speak to Bay Today because they don't like the coverage, to the point where they don't even send out media releases on, really positive things that are happening, be it their different programs and expansions and different things that are happening. They won't even tell them about anything. So how is Canada College getting any negative press around that?
Well, there's every time they do a story about Canada, there's no comment because there's no connection. And whether that's fair or not. But I don't believe that's a positive for Canada not to be included in stories when they do stories about Canada, because they still do stories about Canada.
Did you say doo-doo on our podcast the first time saying doo-doo?
Did I?
Yeah, Ben, can you confirm that there was a doo-doo sighting?
He did say doo-doo, and I said that the other day too.
I'm just saying, it's point of order. I don't believe we're allowed to say doo-doo on a podcast.
I retract that statement.
Thank
I'll
you.
pull a Tanya. There.
Thank you.
How's that?
Or else you'll be sued, Dave. You're going to be sued.
Hey, I heard something about that, Seth.
Are we allowed to talk?
Well,
Maybe not yet?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, boy. Sometimes I hate what the answer is when I ask the question.
Well, I have to do a little bit of homework on it, I think, but
We'll do the homework and then come back to I get nervous now when you're about to say things.
well, let's just say that
Last thing?
last thing, I just want to talk about the math skills of people and how they impact their livelihoods. Fair is the place to be. The Ferris Business Network had its Ice Off competition
I entered
contest. You entered. You had an online form, and there was a skill testing question, right? So it turned out there was 5 people that picked April 6th as the Ice Out Day, which was announced, declared by the Nugget. I think
Did they send up a helicopter?
They asked the helicopter that went up, and they got the information. And I believe the story said that it could have been out 2 or 3 days before, but the weather was.
Was it the same
bad.
helicopter that we had seconded?
We were going to, we were going to be in the same. I think so. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, it could have been. Yeah,
They scooped us on the helicopter.
we got scooped because we were going to do that flyover, right? Do it ourselves.
Well, we did have it, but at that time
drop
when we went to
some
do the
turkeys.
when we went to do the flyover, there was ice all in the lake, so
Yeah,
there was no
yeah.
sense to doing it, right?
And we've held off a little bit of announcing the winner because I was thinking the ice was going to come back there with the weather we've been having. Anyways, so skill testing question, math. 5 of the people picked the right date. 4 of them got the question wrong. So we have our winner. We're about to announce it, but 70% of the people that filled out the form and did the skill testing question, which was 5 plus 4 minus 3 times 2, right? And 70% got it wrong because they didn't do the multiplication first, which you're supposed to do, right? Before you do the addition and subtraction. So 3 times 2 is 6, and 5 plus 4 is 9, and then you minus the 6. And I think the proper answer was 3, I think. Anyways, by memory. Most people got it wrong. I think they did 5 plus 4 is 9, minus 3 is 6, times 2. The wrong answer was 12. How did you do it?
I got it wrong. Totally got it wrong. Because when you told me so many people got it wrong, it's like, how is that possible? And I went, I totally got it wrong. Like, there's a problem when most people got that wrong.
Well, I don't think it's a problem with the question then.
I think it's totally a problem with the question.
No,
It
it's
might
the
have something to
education.
do with our
No.
education system.
Well, in the Stone Age, I guess they didn't have order of operations. I don't know.
Well, in the day and age when you have Google, right? Like you would take a question and just throw it up there and get the right answer. Like it doesn't take brilliance to use Google or a calculator.
Are you calling me stupid?
No, I said it doesn't take brilliance. See, you're
He's
twisting my
basically
words.
calling you stupid, yeah. In many words.
I honestly thought those types of questions, when you do it like you're filling out a form, you're to win fries at McDonald's or whatever it is. They have the skill testing question or whatever it is. I always thought those questions had to be there by law in that they can't give stuff away. They have to put some question there. So it's just a simple question that you have to do. No wonder I haven't won any French fries. I've been getting the math wrong.
It is an easy answer,
They actually
to be honest.
If 70% of the people got it wrong, it's not that easy.
Lotto Ontario or the gambling, they've stopped using skill testing questions.
they have?
And they have word questions instead because so many people get it wrong. It's terrible.
Wow, that is terrible.
It's not to say that you just don't give something away. It's to make sure that the people have the capacity to actually enter a contest. It's
Stop it.
Yes, it is.
Stop.
Have you ever been on Facebook and you've seen those and you've seen those questions, right? Where it's like exactly those kind of questions and they get them wrong. And then there's all these arguments about what's right or what's wrong. And then people will be like, no, you do the brackets first. And then, oh, no, you do the multiplication first instead of the division. And it's like a whole thing, but everybody's just wrong. Except for the people who are right. And then they just get thrown out by the people who are wrong.
Everybody's wrong, except the people who are right.
Well, the people who say the right answer are thrown out by the other people who are not good at math. Because the thing is, you're supposed to do brackets, then you do exponents.
Wait a second. Can I ask a question? Because you're of this
What's the acronym,
group.
Ben?
BEDMAS.
BEDMAS.
Or PEDMAS if you're in the States, because brackets are parentheses.
I never heard of that until you said it. When my kids were going in school, they didn't do math how we did math. It was all like, what's your best guess at this?
What school did you go to? What school taught that out?
There was
Pinewood.
a new math thing that crept into this system.
Oh, it's gone now?
I think they're reversing that trend because telling people there's 5 ways to get to the same place when there's an easier, straightforward way wasn't working.
But that's why BEDMAS exists, to make sure everybody gets a consistent answer, because you can get multiple answers from one.
That makes sense to me.
Okay, well, I guess that's why Pinewood's not around anymore. I don't know.
Oh, what's it called now? Why would they change the name? They tear it down, build a new school, and then change the name. It's like Woodlands or something now. Woodlands in the Pinewood area.
They must have got some help from a marketing company or something.
Well, it wasn't this one.
Hey, I always wanted to ask, who did the Discovery North Bay thing for the museum? Who did that branding? You guys didn't have anything.
No, we
to
had
do with
nothing to do with it.
My God, that was the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Right? Discovery North Bay, and then they had to change it back to North Bay Museum because, duh.
Oh,
remember that?
Yeah, I do remember Discovery North Bay, and that was the museum.
They should have got
that
their
was
money.
The museum.
Whoever said Discovery North Bay advised them on that. They should pay them the money back.
Well, I don't think they're gonna.
I don't think they're gonna.
I don't think they're gonna.
All right. Well, you know what?
This interview we're doing.
This interview is good.
It is good, and I have to say I was fired up.
Yeah.
Like, were you fired up?
Yeah. Well, it needs more. Obviously, they need more help pushing this forward because there's political problems and just trying to honor a real hero.
Yeah, I have. The story's incredible. I don't know if I knew the whole story and the injustice of it all and the politics associated with it. It feels, I was actually so wound up. Well, I don't know if you'll hear it. Did I sound wound up? I felt so wound up. I was emotional.
You said at one point, I'm very wound up. So I would say, yeah.
Was that the first clue?
I think so. You said I'm fired up.
I'll take you at your word.
Okay.
Yeah. No, this is a good one. This is about the late Jess Larochelle's heroics that weren't honored properly. Mike Harrison's here, a former military guy, captain, and Jess Larochelle's brother. He's with us, and we're going to really have a good conversation about something, and I think hopefully inspire people to think about what we do when we send our soldiers across the world to do the jobs that we ask them to do. And the real issue is we're not treating them properly when they come back.
Agreed. Let's get into it.
Today, we're going to talk about why it's a great idea to have Anna Larochelle named Canada's Silver Cross Mother. And we have the guests, Andrew Larochelle, and we have Mike Harrison. Thanks for coming, guys.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah. Mike's supplying the beer. That's why he's here.
Yeah.
I didn't bring any beer, Scott.
What? This is over.
We can go after the podcast, I guess.
Okay. You're back in.
All right, good.
Mike, tell me a little bit about background of why this is a good idea to have Anna Larochelle, the Silver Cross Mother.
So, firstly, Anna is a sweetheart. And she's actually one of the reasons that I know Andrew and I learned about his brother. Pardon me. Jess Larochelle is Anna's son and Andrew's brother. And Jess is a real Canadian hero, and he's from this area. He grew up in this area. He joined the military out of this area and fought for our country. And in 2006, He stood at Strong Point Center, which was a defensive position in Afghanistan. And with this whole section essentially taken out, machine guns taken out, he fired his machine gun into a screaming enemy of 30, and he stood alone. And he held back 30 Taliban soldiers. Having been to Afghanistan, I can tell you with certainty, these guys are the real deal. They've been fighting since Alexander the Great, and he stood there and held them off. Thousands of rounds of machine gun fire later. His gun barrel's probably too hot to continue firing, out of ammunition. He switched to rocket launchers, M72, and fired off over a dozen M72 rounds into the same enemy that were attacking. And he held off a platoon-sized attack single-handedly. In the process, his back was broken, his retina was detached from his eye. He suffered substantial injuries, blast injuries, and life-altering injuries that would ultimately lead to his passing last year. I'm on the board of Valor in the Presence of the Enemy, which is a board that's trying to get him the Victoria Cross. Unfortunately, this government has said that the Victoria Cross is a partisan issue, that they will not issue a Victoria Cross, that even supposing it is a partisan issue that they won't address. And this has been from all levels of government. In fact, it was shouted down, jeered down in the House of Commons a couple of years ago when Aaron O'Toole put forward a motion to even have a review of the subject. The Liberals jeered, yelled, booed, and shouted it down in Parliament. So with all of that exhausted and no realistic avenue with this current government to pursue a Victoria Cross, and with Jess having passed last year, we said, well, what can we do as a group? What can the nation do to at least recognize the sacrifice that the Larochelle families made and that Anna has made, as the mother of that soldier. So the group came together, and a lot of big heads came together, and a lot of good hearts came together and said, we're going to try and get her to be the Silver Star Mother and to get the Memorial Cross and to be the recipient of the Silver Star Cross. So it's a big thing in motion, supported by General Rick Hillier, a big council of veterans that came together to fight for this. So that's kind of a little backgrounder.
Can he receive it posthumously?
So this particular, the Victoria Cross is almost exclusively issued posthumously. And the great sadness of this is that we had an opportunity to give it to him while he was still alive, to do what was right and to honor sacrifice that no one in this room could truly understand because we didn't stand there on that hill that day. And we failed him as a people, I think as a country. And certainly our government failed Jess and every Afghan veteran for that matter. Because to us, Jess is our symbol. We went to war. We didn't go to peacekeep. We went to war and our brothers died, lots of them. And this government refuses to essentially admit that it was a war. Because by giving the Victoria Cross, admits that we went and did the same things that the guys in World War II did, that the people in World War I did. And that story I told you, Jess, is very similar to a lot of Victoria Cross stories from those wars. In fact, on the Battle of Dieppe, which lasted 8 hours, I think they gave out 6 or 7 Victoria Crosses. And for the entirety of the almost 20 years of war in Afghanistan, they've issued 0. It's a big deal. And one small way I think we can honor the Larochelle family is by making Anna Larochelle the Silver Star Mother.
Agreed.
Andrew, how does your mother feel about this?
Well, she's kind of surprised, very honored, she's got a lot of mixed emotions about it. She's still dealing with the passing of my brother, so, but yeah, she, when I asked her about it, it's kind of a bag of emotions and release there, so, but yeah.
And you were a reservist, so how do you feel?
Well, I'd gotta say, my brother didn't just die in combat in Afghanistan. Like, she was his caretaker for 17 years, and she watched her son die for 17 years. Like, if that's not a mother sacrifice, does she deserve something like the Silver Cross for that? Absolutely. Should she be the Silver Cross Mother? It'd be great honor. I think she should be recognized in some way.
Can we get a better understanding of what the Silver Cross Mother is?
So the Silver Cross is It's given to a parent who's lost a child in combat or due to combat. The Silver Cross mother is, out of the Silver Cross recipients, one is chosen and basically represents all the Silver Cross mothers of all the parents who lost a child in combat.
Andrew, does that takes place in Ottawa, right?
I believe so. I believe it's part of the ceremony at the memorial there.
At the cenotaph? It's a Silver Cross mother that lays the wreath, I believe. But there must be, is there more to it than that?
I'm not too sure. I'm just kind of getting into it right now, doing some research. There's some steps that we got to take to get this on the go and that. And I really didn't have that much information about it prior to this being brought up to me. So,
well, the Silver Cross is a medal, right, Andrew? And
yes,
it's presented to those mothers, or historically it's been mothers, but I'm sure it could be any parent at this point now. And it's presented to your parents upon your passing. And then, so to be the Silver Cross mothers, to be recognized as the person who stands up to represent all parents who've lost anyone in combat over the past year, over a period of time. So it is a great honor, but it's an honor that comes with an unbelievable cost.
Yeah.
So in order to get this medal, in order to get this, to receive this, you must have lost a child in battle, by the actions of the enemy or otherwise. So I'm sure it's got to be mixed emotions, like you say, Andrew, because on one hand, you're receiving at least something from the nation to respect your sacrifice and the sacrifice to your family. And on the other hand, you're getting this because your son has passed away from his injuries sustained in combat. It's a bittersweet award for sure.
And that mother's representing all the other mothers that have lost as well. So there's a weight to that, a pride and weight that I understand you. I understand, we understand each other and what this journey we've gone through.
Yeah, and Anna's a very private person too, and part of it is that I think, and I'll speak a little bit on this. Part of that is that her son's heroism has become a national story. It's been broadcast across Canada. 13 municipalities passed motions to support giving him the Victoria Cross, or at least a review for him on the Victoria Cross, representing something like millions of Canadians. North Bay did it, Timmins did it, Ottawa did it, a pile of other municipalities passed these resolutions asking for a review for the Victoria Cross. Of course, they all went to the Governor General, and she did nothing. So we sent him to the Minister of National Defense, who didn't respond, and the Prime Minister's office, who did not even mention it one time. The will of the people, of course, being the foundation of democracy, and when millions of Canadians tell you that they think something should happen, especially something like honoring a soldier, it's really is disgraceful conduct, in my opinion, from our Prime Minister and the PMO and the Minister of National Defense for not even taking a look at it.
Now, I've seen Anthony Rota speak about your brother, and he's brought to tears every time he speaks about your brother. He must have been involved in this application process or this potential review
for the Silver Cross.
Yeah,
I don't believe so for the Silver Cross. So far, it's just been Valor and
so Valor in the presence of the enemy as it's a not-for-profit, and like I said, it's it's all soldiers, and I think all of us are Afghan vets. So, and it's a really cool organization because it was founded by a man named Bruce Moncour, who was a corporal who was wounded in a friendly fire incident in Afghanistan. He took a round, I believe, to the back of the head, and he was very seriously wounded. It took him years to get back on his feet. And out of that, and when he left the military, he still wanted that connection. So he started this, and he started recruiting other people to this cause. And General Hillier, there's two or three generals, a pile of colonels, a lonely ex-captain, a lowly ex-captain, and then we have some sergeants and enlisted members as well that are all working together. And we all love Jess's family. Like, we love Anna, we love Andrew, and we love Jess. And we wanted nothing more than to be able to honor him while he was alive. And we can't. And that's terribly sad. And so at least through this, by recommending Anna for this, we can recognize his family's sacrifice, and hopefully with a change of government, or at least a change at the top to someone who's more willing to remember that these young boys who signed up to go and fight Canada's wars did it out of a sense of selflessness, sense of nationalism, and a sense of pride in our country. and that we're not villains for having done that, and that these men who sacrifice so much, and women for that matter, these are our heroes. And if they're not our heroes, is this a country? You know what I mean? If we don't have military heroes, do we really have a nation anymore?
Well, I just wanted to tie it up a little bit more, talking to politics. And was it Hillier's political stripes and activities during this time? Is that what the Liberals were using as an excuse not to do this?
Well, they never came out and said so much.
Yeah, but do you think so? Like, it seems
It can
obvious
be
to
that
me.
There's an interpretation that a lot of military members are probably conservative-leaning people. A lot of military members, at least historically, have been rural people where you'd usually see a blue pin on the map. But does that really make a difference when?
Well, I'm not saying it would be right. I'm just saying that Hillier was very political, and
Sure.
and if he was involved with the group's efforts, this may have, in liberal eyes, made it political in their eyes. They made the incorrect choice. I think it's bullshit that they didn't look past that. But I think that's what it is. It's a Hillier's political stripes, right?
Yeah, there's a bunch of political type people who have gotten involved in this. But the thing, you brought up Anthony Rota previously, and Rota is the only Liberal to ever say that there should be a review of this, to my knowledge. And because I've put his feet to the fire more than once on this exact subject before.
Yeah, I bet you have.
And well, Jess lived in his area, right?
Yeah.
Lived in his riding. And I know that Anthony, of all the Liberals I've spoken to, is the only one who's spoken Jess's name aloud and said, you know what, this is something that we should do. We should look after our troops. We should look into things like this.
And his hands may have been somewhat tied because of his role as speaker, right? Which is supposed to be not neutral, right? So there may have been something holding him back from doing a little bit more stronger thing, even though we know, politics is pretty murky and dirty out there. But yeah, that may have held him back, I think, a little bit.
Well, and there's also an old saying, the bureaucracy expands to meet the ever-growing needs of the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And there is no bureaucracy more alive than something called honors and awards. It's literally the bureaucracy of ancient rituals and heritage, right? Victoria Cross going back to Queen Victoria, at the turn of the last century. They have 6 medals cast right now. They're sitting there waiting. It's actually a pretty cool story. Do you know the story of the Victoria Cross?
No, please. I want to.
So during the Crimean War, the British captured some Russian cannons. And when you capture the cannons of an artillery regiment, it's like capturing the flag of an infantry regiment. It's a great dishonor to the soldiers that you capture their equipment from, especially the guns. So they melted some of these guns down, and they forged the Victoria Cross out of these cannons, out of the captured battle flags of the enemy artillery, which is the guns themselves. So Canada in 1993, I want to say, 1993, they cast 6 of their own Victoria Crosses. Because, Canada's never actually issued a Victoria Cross.
What?
Canada has never in its own right issued a Victoria Cross. So 99 have been issued so far by the British Crown to Canadians. The Canadian government has issued 0 Victoria Crosses ever. Our highest military honor, theoretically, is the Victoria Cross. In practice, it's the Star of Military Valor, which is what Jess did receive. Canada doesn't have the intestinal fortitude to issue its own highest award. Now, I can sit here and say this because I'm not a member of government or anything like that. But to me, we've had this award now for 31 years. 31 years, of which 20 were war. And we never once decided that someone has reached the bar necessary to be a Canadian hero, the Victoria Cross recipient.
Okay, I like where this is going, but I'm wound up about it. It's incredibly passionate, and there is things that we can do in our community and surrounding communities that can support these initiatives for this family, and we have to continue to do that. I would love to know, Dave, feedback from people that are either viewing or listening to the not just our podcast, but all the other podcasts we're doing from Backroads Bill to North Bay with Love with Lisa and all the other ones, Cheap Seats, all these other podcasts that we're doing. We'd love to hear some feedback. I bumped into Tony Lehman yesterday, and you can see he's all tanned up. He's just coming back from the south, looks so healthy and awesome. And he came right up to me. He says, I watch your podcasts every chance I get. He says, while I'm away in the winter, I'll watch it. I'll watch it every time, and I love that you guys are, the banter you have and the different things that are going back and forth, and some of the topics that we have. But it's really interesting when we first started getting into this, I really wanted to view a podcast. That's how I took in podcasts. But today, I listen to them. It's just where I consume them. And just generally when I'm traveling and going to and from work and things like that, that's when I'm consuming my podcasts. So I'm really curious if we can get some feedback on how people consume their podcasts. How do you like? Do you like it in video format? Do you like it in audio format? Do you like both? Because I like both, but most of my consumption now happens in audio.
Well, we were talking about having a focus group and getting some in-person sort of feedback, talking about it. This is got to be arranged still. I'm going to consult with a couple more staff members about how to do it. But yeah, getting a focus group and have some questionnaires. We're going to give people an opportunity to tell us how they consume it and what they like about what they consume and how we can do better.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. So give us feedback. And if you'd like to be part of our focus group, we'd love to hear from you. Best way to do it is sign up for our newsletter. Go to northbayecho.ca and sign up and be part of our little community here. Let's get back to this. I got to have more. I got to hear more about this story. Can I just want to, I had a stint as honorary colonel. So I
remember I was a captain while you were honorary colonel.
I never saw you because you were behind a secretly locked door. You were never allowed out. You had to pee in a bucket from what I understand.
Yeah.
But one of the things I learned that awards and accommodations and they're sacred to the organization. It's the way in which people move forward. It's the way in which they are acknowledged for the work they do. It's how they grow as great members of the Canadian Armed Forces. I've seen the process in which it goes through, and it's a rigorous process, even for, we'll say, small awards, and that many military members wear across their chest. So I find it incredibly. I'm feeling like a lot of emotions when you talk about this, that this can't take place. And it feels like it can, if it only stayed within the military, it would have happened. But soon as it gets into the political arm, then all of a sudden it's outside of the military and honoring people within the military. And I don't know if I'm encapsulating that properly, Mike and Andrew, but it feels like that the politicians have taken away something that's owed to the military, and it should be the military that gives to the military people because they live and breathe it.
So there's a lot of problems with the Victoria Cross and the way that it's issued, and with Jess's case, you're right, politics, but the military has its own politics. It's never been issued. There is no precedent for issuing one. So at the time of Jess's battle, or the Battle of Strong Point Center, where he fought like a lion, and at this battle, it was recommended, the Star of Military Valor was what was recommended for Jess by his commanding officer at the time, because there was no precedent for a Victoria Cross. So his commander now is part of Valor, and he realizes he has made a mistake. He made a mistake 20 years ago or 16 years ago.
Well, it's not even about a person making a mistake like that. And we've seen it with other medals given out in other wars, World War I, World War II, and so on, where these soldiers come out of traumatic situations, and they're just trying to get past that. They don't even talk about it very much. It could take 10 years, 20 years, and that's been seen with the Victoria Cross in the past, I'm sure. So they didn't have all the information. It's not that a mistake was made. All the information wasn't there, So here we are, 17 years down the road. Jess is more willing to talk about a couple of things, We have this campaign with Valor going on in that, which initially wasn't started just because for Jesse. There's a list of 10 other people that they would like to see reviewed as well.
But Jess was at the top of the list.
Jess's story took the cake,
Yeah.
So yeah. For reviews to be given out to other soldiers in other wars and not in the Afghanistan war, it's like that's a disgrace.
And some of the excuses we've heard is there's a 2-year timeline to submit for the award. Right.
What?
There's a 2-year timeline to submit for the award. Now, you have to remember that in the Second World War or the First World War, you'd be pulled off the line of combat, brought out, brought to the king. He would pin it to you, and back to the fray you'd go. Right. So that's how they used to issue the award. So that would have made sense, right?
Yeah.
Because 2 years later, that soldier would be back in Canada or Australia or India or wherever they were at the time after that place. So that's one of the excuses we've heard. 2 years. One of the excuses we've heard was that at the time, no one had the political will to issue it. One of the excuses, but this is all they are, excuses. Do you know how many living Victoria Cross members there are, anyone? I know the answer. I'm going to set it up for myself. 6. There are 6 across the Commonwealth. Do you know how many people wrote letters of recommendation for Jess to get the Victoria Cross who had previously received one themselves? 6.
So they
every
all
living
Victoria
Victoria Cross member wrote a letter to Jess, thanking him for his service, telling him that they're there for him, showing brotherhood. And what did the government do with these?
So
Ignored them.
I want to shift just a second.
Sure.
And only because I'm fired up about this, and I want to reach out to my MP about this. And I would say, Anthony's been through a tremendous amount over the last little bit. I know he's been an advocate. I'm looking over at Dave now. He's been an advocate for the military for a long time. I think, and I'm gonna reach out to my MP and say, I think this would be your legacy. Let's make this your legacy. Now let's talk about your mom. Because I'm fired up, I'm ready to get on the phone and do whatever we have to do now. I'm sure if anybody's listening to this and watching it right now, they're feeling the same way. What do we have to do to make this happen and support what you're doing so that your mom receives this?
Well, the very first thing would be to get the proper documentation, application, paperwork, whatever's needed from Veterans Affairs or the Legion. Like Valor has my email address and my home phone number. They can contact me anytime they like. I've got all the information. I've got all the documentation that's needed. I just need to know now. I've tried calling a couple of these numbers, getting the runaround, or D&D, don't get an answer, So, yeah, right now we're in the very first steps. Get the paperwork to me, and as soon as that's done, from what I understand of it, because she lost her child due to combat, she's a shoo-in for the Silver Cross, or the Memorial Cross, as they call it. And after that, it's up to the Legion, from what I understand of it, for
So
the
if people were
nomination.
to reach out to their local Legion branches, that might be a good way to...
Okay.
How can people support this campaign?
Yeah.
I think they could reach out to their local Legion branches. And because the Legion ultimately chooses, I believe, the Silver Star Mother, like the one that will represent.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how.
Okay.
So reach out to your local Legion, say, hey, we want Anna Larochelle to represent Canadian families who've lost children in combat.
Mm-hmm.
I actually came across it as a Facebook post. There's that Mark Picard, the past president of the Calendar Legion, shared. So there seems to be something already on social media about it.
Trying to get my mom
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been over Facebook. I'm sure probably a couple other platforms too. I just use Facebook myself. So, but yeah, the word's getting out there. There's already support.
Okay.
We'll provide it in our links and everything that we're doing here. Let's make sure we push those links out and sign up and connect with the Legions, and let's pepper the Legions.
We'll figure it out, get it done.
Yeah, we'll figure it out and get it done. I don't know. I'm all fired up after this.
Well, I'd call Anthony. I'd say, no, Anthony has been helpful. But yeah, calling the MP is definitely a way to do it. People think that it doesn't matter, but they don't want to get the same calls every day. A little bit of, the squeaky wheel almost exclusively gets the oil, right?
Absolutely.
And it's an old term from times of wagons, I guess.
Yeah.
But
just call up Anthony and say, what are you doing on the Larochelle file? Both of them.
yeah, Anna and Jess, please.
Yeah. Well, it's, and I'm sure Anthony, just knowing the man, like, this would be a great legacy piece for him, right?
Well,
Right.
yes, it fits right in with what he needs to do before he leaves office.
I agree. It would be a really powerful thing. I think that's how I feel about it.
And I know that a lot of people would be happy to see it happen if it could. Both for Anna and Jess and their family. When I met Jess, he told me that he didn't need the Victoria Cross. I know he told you that too. He said, I'm okay. I got the SMV. I'm happy at the time when I met him. And that he didn't need it, which of course just convinced me more that he did and deserved it. Humble to a fault. Andrew?
Yeah.
Andrew?
Oh, yeah.
I was reading about the day of the battle where his heroics were on display. He volunteered to man that post, from what I read, and that he suffered one of the first hits, knocked him out, and that's where he suffered those damages. And after he came to again, that's when he joined they did the battling, right?
Yeah, with a broken back.
Yeah,
detached
so with
retina.
a broken back, after
Bony
getting
eardrums.
knocked out, with the retina or whatever detached, that's and he fought
And
after that.
That's the difference between the other Valor medals and the Victoria Cross. So if you man your position and do your job until it's reasonable to abandon the position, which there is a time to withdraw,
Yeah,
that's one thing. You stand there beyond what's reasonable. Now we're into Valor territory. You get blown up, you get severely injured, life-altering injuries where you shouldn't be able to stand. You man that position and you don't give up and you force back something like that. Now we're into Victoria Cross territory. Now we're into that.
yeah. Without his actions, he was providing the time for the rest of the guys to get to fight. Right, like that's what I read.
If
Right?
you're routed in battle, you're not talking.
He was protecting the flank.
Yeah. And if you turn your flank and they roll up your flank, you're talking dozens and dozens of men who would have died.
Yeah,
And that's what he stopped. Dozens of troops that would have died, sorry.
And where did the letters go to from these other recipients, the other medal winners, the 6?
They were all written to Jess.
They're all written to Jess. And what I thought maybe they would be used to, politically move this forward too.
I believe it was to an extent. But also on the other hand, I know some of the letters were kept private and just for Jess's eyes only. Sort of deal.
And how did Jess react to those letters? That's powerful.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
you get one letter from someone like that, it's like,
I think the probably the best way to put it, one word overall, everything is just overwhelming. Like with the emotions, the honor, it brings up memories. So you have sadness and yeah.
Yeah, but it would be overwhelming. 6 heroes of that caliber all writing you a letter saying you're one of us.
wow.
Even if your country won't do it. I know I've talked to the American Medal of Honor Society about Jess, just seeing how they went through processes of old reviews. Because if we're going to look at anyone, we're going to look at America. New Zealand has done a review. Australia has done reviews. Other countries have done reviews. Canada, I believe, stands alone in being unwilling to review Valor. It's such a staggering anti-national action, in my opinion, to suppress Valor.
But I can't wrap my head around, Mike, what you said about that they don't want to acknowledge that there was a war. Like, it's the longest war we've ever been in our history.
But how does the Canadian government, the conflict in Afghanistan, that's what they call it. They don't say the war. When you hear government talking about it, they call it the Afghan conflict. Some government members think we were peacekeeping in Afghanistan. There was no peacekeeping. That was not the mission. We had combat fighting and then we had nation building. Well, combat fighting, they did their job. They fought hard. Nation building, once the politics got involved, is where we failed. As someone who went there on the nation building mission to train, I was an Afghan border police advisor to their intelligence staff general and training general. And the whole time we were there, we knew like the war, when we were leaving, when the money leaves, this isn't going to last. And we called when our interpreters were stranded there. I called Anthony. All of us called. When Kabul was about to fall, we got to get them out. Nothing. Kabul fell. They all disappeared. The government stopped talking about the conflict in Afghanistan. And we were just forgotten. They can't even build a monument. They can't. Soldiers decided on a monument. It didn't meet the government's criteria. They chose a different monument. And then they've never built it. They don't treat it like a war, because if they treat it like a war, they have to treat us all like war fighters. And if we're war fighters, we're like my grandpa's generation, entitled to warfighter benefits. And it's tens and tens of billions of dollars to pay. There was 40,000 of us who did tours. 40,000 Canadian out of 40 million. That's our new number here, right? And there were 40,000 tours, and probably done by about 25,000 troops. 40,000 tours by 25,000 troops. You're talking a fraction of the Canadian population who went to a real war against an enemy that defeated Alexander the Great, the Soviet Union, the British Empire, the American Empire now. We went to a war against one of the oldest war-fighting countries on the planet, and they don't give us the dignity and respect of honoring one of our troops? Foul. Disgusting.
I don't think any Canadians would disagree with anything you just said now. And again, Mike, I'm having trouble wrapping my head around the injustice of all this, which I'm sure you both are living it all the time.
So one small way that we can bring a very small sliver of justice, at least to this family, who in my opinion was disrespected by this government pretty greatly, and not just them, everyone, the whole list of 10 people. It's not just Jess. There's Francis Pegamagabo, who comes from the Wasauksing First Nation just down the road in Parry Sound. He served in the Algonquin Regiment here in North Bay. Sergeant Pegamagabo is a hero. He fought in the Second World War. He didn't get a Victoria Cross for one reason. He's a First Nations person. He did not get a Victoria Cross because he is First Nations. There's no debate about it. You can read his file 100 times.
Yeah,
and every single officer would say this is Victoria Cross worthy.
One of the most prolific snipers, right? Yeah, he was a sniper.
He killed hundreds. Like he was a legitimate hero, and we can't even get a review of him. There's a dozen cases. Most of them pass now, where we look and we say, well, this person didn't get it because of their religion, because of their race, or because it was Afghanistan and not World War II. And it's something that any government could very easily change. With a stroke of a pen, they could change policy. But to sit there and to actively fight against it, to fight against valor, to fight against organizations who only really want to see brave Canadians honored, it's pretty sad.
It is sad.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the Francis Pegamagabo.
Yeah, I've said his name 1,000 times. Pegamagabo. That's why I'm better at it. Yeah,
I used to have to write it out because we did features for it for Anishinaabeg News. Ben, do you mind doing a Google on Francis Pegamagabo?
Why, as a First Nation, like the little I know about history, the First Nation people from a group had more people served in wars for Canada. There's no other group.
Do you know what it cost them? So under the Indian Act, in order to go and fight, they had to give up their Indian Act benefits.
Yeah, enfranchisement, they called it, yeah.
So this is 1940s.
Disenfranchisement.
So when he comes back from the war, he is not qualify under the Indian Act anymore. But he's also unable to be a Canadian citizen because Native people didn't get, or First Nations people didn't get citizenship until the 60s. So he came back from the war, no longer Native or First Nations, and not a Canadian either.
Did not know that.
So these people who went off and fought were disenfranchised from their heritage, were cut off from access to funds that were supposed to be theirs, and at the same time weren't Canadians. Think of the treatment that is. Think about, and now, in this day and age, with reconciliation being front and center, and as it should be, with addressing 200 years of a failed policy, especially in some ways, we can't look at Francis Pegamagabo and say, hang on. Well, here's one way that we can at least recognize the efforts of our First Nations people, or recognize the efforts of our young men who went and died, or young men and women who went and fought and died in Afghanistan. We can recognize these sacrifices, but we don't. We choose not to. It's an active choice.
Francis was actually one of the many veterans that came back and saw in Europe that they weren't getting the same racism out there because they're shoulder to shoulder with people. But so when they came back, they realized, oh, no, we got to fight for our rights. And they became the chiefs and the leaders of communities that formed the Union of Ontario Indians.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
The political arm.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could just read a little bit about Francis there, because I know it's an incredible story.
You may.
Mike, can I steal your mic?
You may.
All right, I'm stealing Mike's mic. Okay, cool. Sorry, what did you want me to say, Dave?
Well, read out what they have there for him as far as his biography, his war record.
Okay, so how do you say the last? I'm going to mess.
Pegamogabo.
Pegamogabo. Okay, so Francis Pegamogabo was one of the most highly decorated Indigenous soldiers of the First World War, an Ojibwe from the Perry Island Band, now
Wissahickon, yeah.
Okay, Wissahickon First Nation, Ontario. He was awarded the military medal plus 2 bars for acts of bravery in Belgium and France. Soldiers who have been awarded the military medal and later performed some similar heroic acts could receive bars to it, denoting further awards. Pegamogabo has one of the 39 members of the Canadian Expeditionary Force who received 2 bars in addition to the military medal.
Yeah, when you said Second World War, I knew it was First World War. It goes that far back. And because the time frame for the Union of Ontario Indians formation and then when it really became strong was after that. It was the First World War. And they came back and realized we got treated like men over there instead of how they're being treated here.
Yeah, and they talk about, I had this conversation with the Veterans Ombudsman, and I made the case that suppressing valor goes against the Veterans Charter. So the Veterans Charter you have a bunch of rights as a veteran, specifically as it deals with Veterans Affairs. However, it is not explicit that it has to deal with Veterans Affairs, which of course makes it bounding, on the full government. And one of them is to be treated with dignity and respect. You're not being treated with dignity or respect if it's systemic suppression of valor based on whatever the criteria is. Excluding people, having exclusionary policies is very un-Canadian. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what the reason is. If it's race, if it's because, I don't know, your political party sent the troops to war and now doesn't want to remember them, like the Liberal Party under John Chrétien sent us, right? When the war kicked off after 9/11, they sent us. Jess went because of the Liberal Party. Now the Liberal Party doesn't want to recognize Jess, doesn't want to recognize dozens of people who fought. And Francis Pegamogabo, to receive the military bar like that it wasn't the right medal for him. It's well known, it's well discussed. There are very few soldiers who don't argue that he deserves a VC. Mm-hmm. But he was a person governed by the Indian Act at the time, and they weren't going to give him the Victoria Cross. And Jess fought and ultimately died for Afghanistan. They're not gonna give him the Victoria Cross. That's my opinion on it, anyways. I know I'm getting dark here, but I do believe it's
No, not at all. I'm fired up.
Was the Minister of Defense jolly at the time that she ignored this request?
So since I got involved, it was Singh, and then it was we just got rid of them. Anita Anand, and now it's Pepitas Taylor. So the Ministry of Veteran Affairs is where good politicians' careers go to die, right? It's the end of the line. So we had Lawrence Macaulay. Lawrence Macaulay, our esteemed member from PEI, couldn't pronounce Jess's name. Jesse Larochelle, he'd say. Jesse Laroche, he'd say. He'd say anything but his actual name, as if he couldn't read a piece of paper. If he couldn't read a piece of paper, boy, oh boy, you need to retire, dude. So he couldn't even say Jess's name. He wouldn't take meetings with, you have to think, we asked for dozens of meetings just to have a conversation. No. And it's not just Mike Harrison writing. It's General Omar, Lavoie, the guy who was the head of Opman, like the heads of the combat zones. All these people all applying for meetings. No. We won't talk to you. This is a partisan issue. All right. If it's a partisan issue, I guess it's a partisan issue. And I'll be honest, the Liberal Party just doesn't care. Like Justin Trudeau said, they just don't have enough to give. I mean, they have 6 Victoria Crosses already printed. It wouldn't even cost them any money. But, veterans asking for our soldiers to be honored, they just don't have enough to give. We're asking for too much, like the Prime Minister said, no matter what the item is.
Shameful.
It is shameful.
So I guess I'll never run for the Liberal Party now.
Are you kidding? They'd accept you perfectly now. So when they say it's a partisan, are the Liberals saying it's partisan?
Yes.
Yet they seem to be the blocker.
Well, the partisan issue is, of course, that they won't address the subject.
too many high-profile conservatives backed it, so they don't want to deal with that.
But this isn't exactly.
But they also
like
don't want to deal with the
right?
fact they don't want to deal with recognizing the Afghanistan war as well.
I
right?
didn't know that.
So that's the other politics involved, right?
So there's money owed to veterans that we're not providing as a society.
So
Because of that?
25,000 guys who went to and women went to Afghanistan, but it's not. They don't get certain benefits because it wasn't declared
So
a
if
war.
you look at the way that the Second World War veterans were treated coming back, and the access to care that they were granted, the pension programs that they had, all these things, these wartime benefits, the current plans are nothing like that. They're nothing like that because we hadn't had a war since, realistically, Korea. Korea was a war. The 2nd Battalion, PBCLI, who I had the honor of deploying with to Afghanistan, they fought at the Battle of Cap Young Hill, where they held off thousands of Chinese soldiers in the Korean War. No Victoria Cross. They didn't give one they haven't issued one since the Second World War. Nothing after that has been declared because we haven't declared war, right? The Canadian government never declared war on the Taliban or on the Afghan government. So they can send us to a country where war is happening, where suicide bombs are going off, where guys are coming back scared for the rest of their lives because of what they saw and were exposed to, because the enemy was everywhere and anywhere at all times, including cleaners who'd come in and shoot people while they were sitting there in the washrooms. Like, it was omnipresent war. And like while you were there, right, it was all around you. And
So it sounds like it's strange to me because I'm sitting here thinking, well, that sounds just like semantics. Okay, they didn't declare war, but there was still a war. But there's actually so much more to it, benefits and how people were treated coming back because they didn't declare war, they didn't make these statements or...
Well, and they released a new Veterans Charter, which I will admit in some ways was better than the old system. It's a new way of treating vets. In some ways, it's worse than the old system. It's debatable, but by not having like the recognition of war, by not having the monuments, by not having when the Afghan war ended, where were the parades? A small little ceremony in Ottawa. It's suppressed intentionally, right? Little tiny event. No, 25,000 men, women went over there and fought, or 25,000 to 40,000. They've never given the real number. But a lot of people did second tours, third tours. Some people spent years there. They should have had us on the streets marching through Ottawa proud. They didn't do that. They suppressed it. They put on little parades across the wings, across the bases. When the 10-year anniversary of Afghanistan came up, it just happened the other day. It was just a little page on, the Veterans Affairs page, little post, little something like that. But Veterans Affairs is doing the 90 days to D-Day, where every day for 90 days, they're bringing up D-Day, 1 day of combat. Granted, the single largest day of combat of all time. I'm not taking away from it. They absolutely should. I'm not trying to say they shouldn't. But why suppress one thing? Why aggrandize one thing? It doesn't make sense.
I had the honor of going to Vimy and with a group of military people, and I learned so much about being there. I didn't know that that's our territory, or the French gave us Vimy. We own it. We fly the Canadian flag there. That's our, and it's so. And they still have ordnance. There's areas you can't go in. There was so many ordnance that they still, I think, sheep go around and they cut the grass basically, and they lose a sheep every now and again. It gets blown up because still that's from World War One. So it went through the tunnels and everything like that. But going back to what you said about why monuments are important, they're important to soldiers. So when we did that, not only was that like an incredibly moving, important moment that we spent with a number of military people. But the general at that time said, you know what, we're going over to, there was a German burial cemetery not too far away. And we actually went with the German contingent that was there. And it was, I thought it was an incredibly powerful moment. We're standing soldiers to soldiers that were battling at one time, but they had the respect of one another to say, we didn't decide to come here. But we fought here together. We fought against each other, and we respect everybody that came to battle, and we're going to honor the dead that went through this. And that's why I think monuments are so, as you say, it's not just a big rock in a place. It's a really important symbol of what people have given and lives have been given to free people and to honor those people that fought on those lands.
Yeah, it's a very small token that a nation
It's a very small token.
can do. Same as Napoleon used to say, men will do a lot for a coin and a bit of cloth. But when you break it down, that's what a medal is in its sum of its parts. It's a coin and a bit of cloth. And the intestinal fortitude to be willing to say this man's accomplishments are greater than anything I could have ever done. Part of the reason I think that Jess wasn't recommended, as a captain, retired, I had a different military perspective than Jess. I went through as an officer. I loved my time in the military. I was always joking around. I always had as much fun as I could, and I was in the Air Force in a different trade that I wasn't. So it was a little bit of a different career than Jess would have had. But Jess was a private. How old was he at the time?
Oof. Must have been early 20s.
Early 20s.
Early
Yeah,
20s.
yeah.
Sticks out from what I was reading. I'm not
baby.
sure. Yeah.
A baby.
And he was a private. So I think part of the reason why Jess didn't get the medal is that his low rank, the lowest of all the ranks, he was a brand new, essentially private, who did all that stuff. He didn't have 20 years in the military of conditioning and expertise and training. He was a young man.
That even makes it
To
even
me, it
more
makes
so.
it greater. To me,
Yes.
it says let's honor this man. Let's respect this man because he did something realistically without the time in and training and conditioning and practice and experience that should drive you to do that. As a relatively young troop, you might think time to go.
Yeah.
I'm a brand new private. I'm the lowest paid guy here. It's time to. Everyone else is gone. It's time to move back, but not him. He moved forward. So to me, it reinforces it. But I also think it's part of the reason he didn't get the medal. I think if it was a captain, we wouldn't even be talking about this. We would have had a Victoria Cross.
Okay, let's make sure that we're gonna come back again, and we're gonna talk about the success of our campaign. All right, Andrew, we'll come back, right? Right on. And we're gonna do our part. I know the people listening in are going to do their part. Going to reach out to our legions, start talking there. You guys got some paperwork and stuff to do. I'm going to reach out to my MP, and I hope others do as well, to talk about Jess and find out what's happening on that file. How did you put that?
Yeah, you get how are you doing on the Larochelle file? Both of them.
Larochelle file. Okay. Yeah.
Both of them.
Both of them. Yeah.
Jess, and making sure that in our small way, we can honor Anna's sacrifice and the sacrifice the Larochelle family has made for Canada.
Right.
Because it's without living parallel. There is no one alive who has given as much as Anna has for this country.
Mm-hmm.
We'll add some information at the bottom of the newsletter for the next month after this comes out, so that people know, the progress and the details and the numbers. So we'll put something at the bottom of the newsletter,
Okay.
and that'll just keep pumping out
We're on
until we
board
get it
with you guys.
changed. Yeah.
Whatever you need from us, okay?
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for having us out to talk about
you.
this today.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Dave, how do we as a community lean into this and support these initiatives that they want to do?
Well, we're going to make it a regular part of the newsletter, letting people know what they can do as far as supporting the campaign to have Mrs. Larochelle as the Silver Cross mother. That's what the Legion makes that decision, so we'll give them the links they need. We also will start adding a little bit more of information about the background until something is changed, and to tell them who to contact to let them know to bring it up. Like we'll have a link to Anthony Rota and ask him how he's doing on those two fronts.
Yeah.
How to move those files forward. Yeah. That's what I think was a start. And then the idea is to be consistent and follow it. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Good interview, and I hope it inspired some people to get involved in this initiative. And it's a bigger issue than just our community and just the people that we're talking about. This is how we treat our military and how we treat these women and men that serve for us in the most dangerous, dark places in the world, and how we look after them for doing what they do every day.
Yes, for sure. Well said. Well, this is the Echo Essentials podcast. Thanks for joining us.
I'm Scott Clark.
And I'm Dave Dale.